Welcome to the On-Premise IT Roundtable podcast, the only show that dares to be both on topic and usually on location. Each time we meet, we bring together a group of IT luminaries to discuss a single concept. In this episode, sponsored by Pure Storage, we're discussing the concept of technical debt and how the modern application stack is basically throwing out all the technical debt that we've accrued over these years. But first, let's meet the panel today.
Hi, I'm Thom Greene. I'm the founder and principal of GreenComp.
Hi, I'm Sean Rosemary. I'm the Global Vice President of Pure Storage, looking after our emerging technology solutions, specifically our FlashBlade and Portworx technologies.
Hello, my name is Arjan Timmerman. I'm the founder of Tech Unplugged. You can find me at techunplugged.io.
And I'm Stephen Foskett, organizer of Tech Field Day and publisher of Gestalt IT. You can find me at gestaltit.com on the Gestalt IT Rundown every week and here in the On-Premise IT Roundtable podcast. So one of the things that a lot of us have been talking about, and I know this has been a conversation between Sean and Arjan and me over the years, is technical debt. The fact that over time, you tend to accrue more and more technology cruft that you have to maintain forever in order to keep your stuff running and going. And in fact, a lot of companies in the IT space basically make all their money allowing people to preserve their technical debt and keep it going into the future so that people have to continue to keep working hard and keep buying more and more stuff that they don't need. But modern applications are changing all that. And in fact, most modern applications don't rely on the traditional IT stack at all. That's why it was interesting when a company like Pure Storage came up with totally different storage platforms and acquired the Portworx, because frankly, these are not technical debt solutions. These are totally something new solutions. So Sean, let's start with you. What's your feeling on technical debt and what's your feeling on throwing it all out and starting from scratch for modern apps?
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I mean, this is a very interesting topic. I want to start with a very basic foundational statement. When we think about the origins of IT architecture, even IT systems, remember that this was all about efficiency. We originally built these systems that were more efficient than humans in calculation and database and processing, large amounts of let's call it business transactions. And it evolved to the point where whether we moved to databases or ERP or otherwise, the construct around IT was efficiency. More specifically, saving the company money. Obviously, keeping running, availability, resiliency, but saving the company money. And I think what fundamentally we saw happen about 15 or 20 years ago, when modern applications first started to kind of, hatch out of the egg, we saw the early origins of what today would look like. Well, the construct shifted from saving the company money to really making the company money. In addition, the construct of data moved from compliance and governance, cover me in the instance that I need to recall something, to how do I actually look at the data that I'm generating across my business, monetize it, and turn it into a revenue opportunity. This has fundamentally changed not just the way we run IT, but the investment profile. And what I would suggest to everyone here is a lot of the paradigms that were built to drive efficiency simply hold back innovation and hold back this birth of modern applications, where we're seeing, the challengers overtake the traditional players.
Yeah, when you're talking about the technical debt and you're talking about how modern applications are starting to take that over, it really becomes a question of how quickly can that happen? Because a lot of times it's a very transformational process. But as you're doing that transformation, as you're looking at things, the debt still keeps accruing, the debt still keeps piling up. So whenever you're looking at the, let's say legacy or enterprise space, and you're talking about these applications, just how quickly the engineers, the architects that have been there that have let this pile up over the past 10 years or 15 years, that how quickly can they react and how quickly are they going to be willing to change and willing to adopt a new framework and technology? Or do you think that that's something that you need to hire in and they have to bring in new blood to kind of help infuse that enthusiasm into the mix?
Well, that's the interesting part, Tom, is that, retrofit always seems like an easier answer. Why do I want to rip everything out and throw it away when I can just, retrofit in the piece that's not working? I'll add a web service. I'll add a database module. I'll lift and shift so that I'm consuming from cloud, but ultimately my application is still running the way it originally ran. The problem is none of those actually get you to the end value. By retrofitting, you don't modernize your customer experience. You don't modernize your supplier experience. You don't change the revenue profile, and you end up creating a massive or mountain of debt for the next individual who comes in to build on that, who now has a harder job to make the decision of ultimately looking at a brand new architecture.
So I totally understand what you're saying, and I kind of go with you a long way, but I still think there's some technical debt is also around what are we going to do as a company for a foreseeable future, because we already invested in stuff. We need to make sure that some of the applications that are running keep running, and we need time to re-architect and refactor and redo the applications we have. So I think a good balance between what is going on, what we have right now, and where are we going to needs to stay within the company, right? It's not like I'm going to drop everything today and start all over. If I'm a new company that just started, yeah, I can do that. But if I have a company that's been there for a couple of years, and it's not only about making profit, it's also sometimes making sure that the patients that I have can do, or we can help them with whatever we do for them. So it kind of needs to balance out. The technical debt is there, and I think it needs to stay there in some cases, but in other cases, you should forget it and build a complete modern application the way it should be.
Yeah, so I mean, thank you for kind of bringing some perspective in there, Arjan. I do think if we look back at where we started, let's not forget the first crack at kind of modernization was this enterprise service bus model. This was this concept of how do I take these traditional applications or legacy applications and make them live in this new world. The reality is I completely agree with you. There are mainframe applications and proprietary Unix applications that will not or cannot be migrated, and they will live for the foreseeable future. There's an extremely long tail. The point is, though, where can you eliminate it? Because ultimately, where you can eliminate it, you are saving yourself an exponential amount of debt moving forward. But not just debt, it's not all about cost. You're also building yourself a tremendous amount of agility. Because where you can move from monolithic applications to microservice applications, and where you can start to look at updates to hundreds of lines of code, or even tens of lines of code on a daily or hourly basis versus quarterly or annual updates to a monolithic code base, is ultimately, it's that agility that's going to drive your advantage as a business in the marketplace. So I agree with you. It's all about organizations being very, I would say, opinionated about what can be modernized and making those hard decisions to modernize those components, and what just can't, just simply cannot and must be built around. I think there's been too much compromise, and in many cases, I do think the hard decisions have been kicked down the road, and it's time to ultimately make those for good.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the things that, of course, underlies this whole discussion, and that's that, you can't just say, forget all this, we're going to shut the business down for 2 years, rewrite everything, and start from scratch. But I think it is really important for business people, especially for IT management, to understand that so much of what we do as an IT infrastructure organization, IT operations organization, so much of what we do revolves around keeping things running instead of around making things work. And I know that that sounds kind of like the same thing, but there are a lot of tools out there, a lot of operations management monitoring tools, also a lot of infrastructure that simply exists because the underlying thing can't do the job. And so, it's like, oh, well, our car can't drive on the snow, so I'm going to put skis on it. Oh, well, it can't accelerate, so I'm going to put a jet engine on it. Eventually, you have to stop and say, wait, why are we driving a car on the snow anyway? And I think that that's kind of the fundamental thing here. And frankly, in my opinion, it seems that modern applications are finally giving us the excuse to break free. In other words, it's one of those things where we're kind of, until now, it was pretty easy to say, well, okay, we'll just strap some more stuff on here. Oh, we need high availability. Well, then we'll get another one, and we'll just have another path, have another switch, have another storage array, have another this, another that, and we'll just keep building all this stuff up to kind of band-aid over the problem. But modern applications are finally saying, wait a second, we're designed for unreliable infrastructure. We're designed for distributed infrastructure. And all that traditional stuff, it kind of doesn't matter. I think that's what we're getting at here, right?
That's absolutely what we're getting at. So I just want to reinforce what you said because it's so important. In an old world traditional application, we counted on the infrastructure for resilience. We counted on the infrastructure for essentially all these hooks and services that were required because the application itself was talking directly to the infrastructure through the operating system. When in the world of modern applications, a lot of those hooks that we required in traditional servers, traditional network, traditional storage, not only are they not required, they don't exist. They're actually redundant. And in some cases, even using them will cause you more expense and more heartache than not having them at all. The other thing, though, that I want to really bring up is even the way in which we're using, and I'm gonna kind of evolve here to storage for a moment, just to kind of get into a point. When we think about what we do in the storage side across block, file, and object, fundamentally the block protocol has stayed more or less the same. It's a very mature protocol. If we look at file across NFS and SMB, originally CIFS, those protocols, although still very much in use, were never designed or evolved to handle billions of tiny files. And when we try to move from a large number of small or a small number of large files to a large number of small files, we actually put a tremendous amount of stress on those protocols and we slow down our entire project. What I'm getting at is we have to look at the overall architecture, the constructs that we built through the years, and start to get really comfortable being uncomfortable with new platforms, new architectures, new ways of thinking, new ways of operating. And I understand it's significantly easier to just bridge that modern applications into your common operating model of your traditional apps, but by doing so, you will essentially bankrupt your digital transformation.
Yeah, the car with skis and a jet engine analogy that Stephen said was very evocative of some of the conversations that I have going into large customers and looking at their applications. And the interesting thing, whenever you're talking about this technical debt and eliminating it, a lot of times the teams that you're dealing with, whenever you're on the digital transformation team, they don't know the application, that they're not even really concerned with what's on the environment or the infrastructure beyond the operating system or what's going to wake them up at night. So I think DevOps goes a long way, but whenever you're looking at a enterprise or a legacy environment that you're trying to start this digital transformation in, there has to be a whole lot of collaboration, which goes against this whole enterprise mindset that we keep talking about. Of you have to break down that silo, you have to break down that door, so that your digital transformation team actually knows what they're transforming from and into, and what capabilities could even be there, because they're very comfortable making sure the skis stay on that car when the jet engine starts going. And they've been trained like that, and I've been trained like that for 15 years. I'm very comfortable changing skis in the middle of a snowstorm. So it's a process and people problem as well of making sure that you're bringing the right people to the table, and that you're empowering the people who are being threatened by the whole digital transformation conversation, making sure that they understand where their place is in the whole thing.
Yeah, it's interesting, Tom, as you talk about this people, process, and technology. It brings me back a little to this bimodal IT strategy that came out, I don't know, I'm going to say almost a decade ago. And it really pitted the traditional application owners almost against the modern application owners. It created this fiefdom where it was like, okay, you guys are out playing with all the new stuff, and it's our job to actually keep the business running and generate the revenue for the company. And I think that crashed and burned because it created a wall rather than actually creating a collaborative workspace for traditional application teams and modern application teams to not just say one is better than the other, but that they're different and embrace that they're different. In fact, kind of like we have with hybrid cloud, we're not saying the data center is bad and the cloud is good. We're saying there's places, there are more choices. I like to say we've gone from a 16 color palette to a 16 million color palette in terms of IT architecture. And it's not about or, it's about and. But the other point on the people side, in addition to those running the IT, is, think about the change where 20 years ago, no one would have consulted the business owner. No one would have consulted the data science team. There wasn't even a data science team in a lot of cases to understand the requirements of an application. IT would have been given the need to scale an app, and they would have figured it all out. What we're finding today at Pure Storage is more and more, in fact, all of our modern application conversations are happening with the data teams, with the DevOps teams, and with the line of business. And by the time it gets to IT, it's typically at a point where the standards have been selected, the architectures have been done, and in many cases, the IT architects are actually integrated into those line of business or data teams. And so what's happening is it's a lot more about getting to that ultimate outcome. In the case of data science, how many simulations can we run? How many algorithms can we test? In the case of healthcare, how many genomic sequences can we throw through the system? We're working with some government clients around civilian security, right? How much data can we ingest and how quickly can we do it and how quickly can we connect the dots to take the appropriate remedies? These are very different than our traditional conversations around IOPS, latency, performance, uptime. And so as the people have changed, the decision criteria for architectures have changed. And we're finding at Pure that it's creating, a different set of questions and a different set of evaluation criteria in many of the deals that we're competing in.
So I want to go into that a little bit further because I really hear everybody saying we need to interchange all the teams. We need to make sure that the devs are talking to the ops and the devs or the architects are talking to them as well, but the whole team needs to come together and making sure that the applications that are already running keep running or transition to a modern application and a new and modern application that are being architectured to bring revenue to the company needs to be architected in a new and modern way. So I think bringing the teams together and having some technical debt isn't that bad, let's put it that way. But we need to get our head off at times and say, we are going to do it a different way. We're going to take off the skis and get the application running where it needs to run instead of getting the jet engine on.
Yeah, as we're talking about technical debt and legacy architecture, the other way that you can say legacy is an application that makes money. So it's been around for a long time. Maybe it's over 10 years old and it was written and it works. It makes millions or billions of dollars a year. So it is really even hard to approach that and say, yeah, it's got its rough edges, but maybe we could make it run better or faster or more efficient if we figure out how to break it into microservices or run it into some sort of actual modern methodology. So trying to take that and go to the business and say, we know this is making money, but here's the reasons why you need to modernize it anyway. I see that as a challenge, and it's definitely some pushback that I've heard before.
Yeah, it's always hard to quantify, right? An application is making the company money. Could it be making the company more money? Are we celebrating the fact that this is a $50 million business where it could be a $500 million business or even a $5 billion business over time? I think the other key thing to kind of keep in mind in all this is, ultimately, if we think about the way in which these projects are funded, and Thom, I'd love for you to kind of, give me the follow-up, because it's kind of on your point. These original projects and the way we funded them based on what I consumed last year, plus or minus 10%, plus or minus 5%. They were flat. That's all on efficiency. That's an efficiency-based plane. I wonder if maybe, are we even building the right business cases for these apps? Are we putting enough, thought into what kind of opportunity we have? And are organizations doing a good enough job, in your opinion, of getting enough of these projects into the funnel and allowing them to be tested in a way that doesn't cost millions, if not, tens of millions of dollars, but really filter through the signal to the noise, figure out which projects are actually going to pay off, and then in doing so, be able to fund hundreds of more initiatives and then double down on the ones that are working.
Yeah, it becomes very tricky, and it's a case-by-case basis conversation of can you come in and efficiently show that it is going to run better, it is going to help X, Y, or Z. Like if you're going in as an ops conversation and saying this program has woken up my on-call ops guy every night for 20 years that it's been running. If we modernize it, then we can, make his life better. Is that going to be a compelling case, or is it, hey, we can actually bring in this, equipment or adopt this framework or do something that actually will make it run better? And, yes, he's waking up every night, but he's waking up every night because the service is broken. So whenever you're having that kind of conversation, it goes different. But there's a lot of products out there that are cloud, or they're in the cloud, but their entire focus is just making sure you're picking up that technical debt and like chucking it into there. Once again, you're pushing the can down the line in a whole new innovative way. So it is really hard to pinpoint exactly who or why someone's going to make the millions of dollars investment in changing something that's not broke from a business perspective.
Yeah, so let me kind of get to where is the technical debt, and what are maybe some of the areas that I think we can start to really break down some barriers. I would tell you we've made progress here, and it's been huge progress. And I don't know that we've celebrated the progress. When we looked at the amount of manual effort associated with setting up servers and getting them running, we solved that with VMware. We solved that with virtualization. When we looked at the pain of setting up and configuring switches, we solved that in many cases with software-defined networking. Telcos have solved it with NFV. We're making progress. I would tell you that storage has still been the area of the dark ages. It is still the largest investment of people, time across most organizations to just manually have storage ready, accessible, available. Now, the reason in the modern space, it's not a big deal, because a lot of the storage has become automated through Kubernetes. A lot of it's become automated through CSI. A lot of it is getting even further automated through Portworx. But I would say that the lack of innovation around organizations saying, hey, I actually need to modernize my storage platform that's even running my traditional apps, simply so that I can free up time and effort and energy so that I can actually focus the IT skill and architecture on finding ways to bring this modern stack together and bring this modern stack to life, rather than continuing to invest in manual, redundant tasks on the storage side.
I'd like to point out too that we're not necessarily saying that technical debt is bankrupting your legacy apps. I mean, legacy apps can continue to run and make you money. The premise here was that technical debt is bankrupting your modern apps. And I think that maybe, I don't want to speak for y'all, but maybe we can all agree that modern apps built on legacy infrastructure is bad. I mean, if an app, for example, uses object storage, maybe don't have some kind of like a weird gateway that like converts, I don't know, like a fiber channel SAN to become like object storage, to get really specific, maybe use an object storage system. If an app, needs a Kubernetes integration, maybe don't like write some giant thing, maybe use something that works that way. And otherwise, this is the thing for me. Otherwise, if you try to build a modern app on an old infrastructure, you're going to end up with a modern app that doesn't work, or that doesn't give you the results you want. I mean, that seems to be my opinion. I don't know, Arjan, what do you think? Is that a compelling argument? Because I am sensitive to what you're saying, that maybe some things work okay with traditional infrastructure.
Yeah, totally agree. I think a lot of all of that has to do with the transition that we're in. We're seeing a lot of folks, that it's already mentioned, going to hybrid cloud, going to cloud first. So building the new application brings a complete different ball game. And a lot of people maybe starting on their old infrastructure. But I think that you're totally right in the fact that modern applications, and that's why I totally agree with the premise that we had, you have to rethink and really get rid of the technical debt that you are taking with you over all those years, and really rethink, okay, how am I going to build this app to make sure that it runs now, but it runs in the future as well. Yeah, not taking into account the technical debt that we have, but just going into, okay, so what does the world look right now, and how will it be in a couple of years, and where do I want to have it residing? In some cases that will be on premises, so build your on-premise environment the right way, but in the other case, it will probably go into the cloud.
Yeah, and I would agree with that too. And even if you're building stuff in the cloud natively and going cloud first, it would be a hard argument to even say a traditional 3-tier application it is a cloud or is a modern application just because it sets in 3 tiers in the cloud. If you're still maintaining that OS, you're still maintaining the traditional type of storage underneath, you're still maintaining traditional databases. It's not really a modern app. It's a modern app in sheep's clothing, really. It's got the same things that you need to get rid of that's going to hold you back. So whenever you're making these cloud first applications, if the architect's coming to you and saying, okay, here, let's take what we've already been doing on premises for these 20 years, let's just go ahead and do that up there. Maybe if you're in phase 1 of just getting your feet wet, but that's not really the modern apps that I think Sean is talking about here either. I just think that it's legacy thinking holding you back.
Yeah, I think we can get very aligned here in that, when I'm running run physical machine, pain's not that big. I move to 10 VMs or 100 VMs, the pain's still not that big. I can still do a lot of things the way I did them with 1 when I have 10. But when I get to containers and I'm in a world of 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 or millions of containers, you're going to get customers like Roblox, who obviously saw a huge surge. My kids are some of the biggest fans of their service. How do you manage at that scale? And I think that's where, getting to this technical debt, the decisions that, could have been made as mistakes by companies who said, it's good enough. Let's keep our traditional infrastructure solutions in place. It's only the beginning of the project. What's the big deal? Well, all of a sudden, demand surges, and we go from 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 to even 1 million containers. And now we've essentially flooded our organization with operating costs that's keeping us back from actually rolling these out. And so what I would leave you with is simplicity at scale. Modern applications are all and completely reliant on simplicity at scale. And if we can take the operating model out of the equation, a lot with what Pure and Portworx are fundamentally focused on. We call it the modern data experience, but it really is driving simplicity at scale across all applications. And in doing that, what it says is focus your resources and your energy on figuring out ways to integrate across the data pipeline. And Stephen, if I may, I just want to dive into this for a moment because it's a very important point. There is, to my knowledge, no fully integrated stack for data pipeline that delivers everything modern applications require. And if we say modern applications are basically modern analytics, and those analytic pipelines are powered by 50 or 75 different titles of various applications that do everything from ingest to transform to analyze to visualize, etc. the IT teams are going to need resource, and they're going to need intellectual horsepower to figure out how to reliably integrate all these platforms. To do that, we got to simplify the back end. And it's modern infrastructure that's going to get them there. And that's exactly where Pure Storage plays. And that's where we will continue to push and essentially disrupt legacy players in that industry.
Yeah. And, I think that the place to leave it is, Pure Storage or not, Portworx or not, if you're relying on legacy architectures to support modern applications, it's not going to work. The technical debt absolutely will bankrupt your modern apps. And frankly, that's a good enough premise for me. So thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great having this conversation. Before we go, I want to give each of you a chance to tell us where we can connect with you and continue this conversation. So Sean, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. You can find me on LinkedIn, Sean Rosemarin. You can find me on Twitter at Sean Rosemarin. You can also find, obviously, a whole bunch of Pure-related blogs. And if you are looking for my thoughts beyond the world of Pure Storage and just overall IT transformation in general, I do have my own personal website at seanrosemarin.com, which tends to be more vendor-neutral kind of philosophy type conversations.
You can find me on LinkedIn as well, Arjan Timmerman. Twitter at Arjan Tim, and I said it before, at Tech Unplugged, or at Tech Unplugged is also a Twitter handle that I use, but the blog is techunplugged.io/blog.
And you can find me on Twitter at Tom Talks Tech. I'm on LinkedIn as well, joining the party with LinkedIn if everyone else. And I blog at greencomp.com.
And as for me, you can find me right here at gestaltit.com every Tuesday with a new podcast and every Wednesday with the Gestalt IT rundown of the week's news. So thank you for joining us for the On-Premise IT Roundtable. If you enjoyed this discussion, please do subscribe, rate, and review the show, since that really does help. That's some technical debt that helps. And please do share this show with your friends. This podcast is brought to you by gestaltit.com, your home for IT coverage across the enterprise. And this special episode is brought to you by Pure Storage. For show notes and more episodes, go to gestaltit.com/podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.